I'd like to start by giving some of the shared identities between India and the Philippines. One, I think India and the Philippines have a very strong tradition of democracy. India is the largest democracy in the world. The Philippines is the oldest republic in the region. Both countries respect the rule of law. Both countries give focus on a very strong development agenda. So that's shared identities. But at the same time, both countries have shared challenges in terms of terrorism, cybersecurity, in terms of the pursuit for sustainable development. So in this aspect, you have something in common, but at the same time, you also have challenges. This provides the venue, the platform for greater cooperation and collaboration. India and the Philippines have been had relations since 1949. So that's almost about 70 years of relations. And from then, they've actually established numerous mechanisms for consultations and dialogue. So in terms of political cooperation, we have existing mechanisms both at the senior official level as well as the ministerial level to discuss a broad range of issues that affect political cooperation. We've been blessed to have a number of meetings that have been held both at the senior official as well as the ministerial level to discuss different issues. But in terms of political cooperation, I think what is important to mention is that there is a convergence of interests. Both countries are concerned about the scourge of terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. Both countries need to promote maritime cooperation, both in terms of safety and security. And both countries, as I've already mentioned, also need to actually focus on how their economies can grow. I mentioned shared identities. It's also important to mention that both countries are actually at a demographic sweet spot, which means to say we have a large percentage of population that is actually below 40 years old, 25 to 40 years old, which are the productive sector of the economy. Both countries are also actually performing quite well, 7% growth, which is quite good in terms of the region as well as the world. So there are a lot of positive developments in both countries, especially at this time when both the Modi administration, Prime Minister Modi, as well as President Duterte, have a very strong reform agenda. Prime Minister Modi has oft to mention the need for India to reform, to be able to transform itself, and to become an emerging economy as well as an emerging power within the region and the world. And the same agenda of change is actually being pushed by the current administration of President Duterte. So politically, there are convergence of issues and concerns. Now, if you move to defense cooperation, I think there's a lot happening in terms of defense cooperation. India has been very open to actually share with us in terms of training for both our police force as well as the armed forces. India also makes regular port calls, and India has expressed openness to actually supply us and help us with our modernization program. So in terms of defense mechanism, there are also existing defense cooperation, there are existing mechanisms that are both in the bilateral level as well as in the regional level through the ADMM. Now, if you move to economic cooperation, this is one area where a lot of opportunities abound. In terms of trade, our trade has actually been in 2016 amounting to about 1.8 billion. The balance of trade is largely in favor of India. We are importing a sizable amount in terms of buffalo meat, medicaments, to name a few. And we need to do more in terms of selling to India so that the trade would actually be more balanced compared to the present status. Investment, India and the Philippines are actually doing very well when it comes to the IT sector and industry. 9 out of 10 of India's biggest IT companies are actually established in the Philippines for the BPOs. So there are actually areas where we can encourage India to actually invest in the Philippines, and India, on the other hand, is also encouraging Philippines to invest in India. Now, of late, I think what we could mention is one big firm, the GMR, has actually won the contract in terms of the building of the airport in Clark. They also did the renovation, the retrofitting in Cebu, and we're hoping that as we develop, as both countries develop, we will have both investors from India and the Philippines seizing opportunities so that they can actually contribute to the greater growth of both countries. The Build program of President Duterte, I think, opens a lot of opportunities for both countries, for India as well as the Philippines. And India and Indian companies have actually expressed openness to also participate in this very laudable program. I also would want to share that tourism, we're doing quite well. In 2016, there were about 90,000 Indians visiting the Philippines. And we're hoping that by 2017, we will actually reach the target of 100,000 plus. We are at the Indians are actually at the 12th rank when it comes to tourist arrivals from India. So we're hoping that with greater promotion, with greater marketing, we will have more Indians visiting the Philippines. One issue in this regard, I think, is the issue of connectivity. Unlike our Asian countries, the Philippines does not have direct flights to India, and this to a large extent constrains large groups to come to the Philippines, notwithstanding the knowledge that the Philippines offers a lot in terms of adventure, in terms of experience, in terms of tourist sites. So I think once the issue of connectivity is addressed to a direct flight, we will have more Indians and Filipinos traveling in both countries. Yes, in November, we were very happy that Prime Minister visited Manila. Prime Minister attended the East Asia Summit. He also attended the ASEAN-India Summit as the Philippines chaired ASEAN in 2017. At the sidelines of this meeting, there was a bilateral meeting between India and the Philippines, and it was in this meeting that a number of agreements have actually been signed and announced. You mentioned 3 of this, and I would actually say that these MOUs are important largely because they indicate the areas of cooperation where both countries are earnest to actually push cooperation. Agriculture is one. The agricultural MOU largely focuses on technical cooperation in various areas from rice production to processing, fisheries, bioagriculture, agricultural machineries, to name a few of the areas that have been identified by the MOU. But it's important to note that both countries are actually doing good in different aspects of agriculture. India, for example, is actually one of the largest producer and consumer of a lot of agricultural products. The Philippines, on the other hand, has actually done well in terms of value added, in terms of many of the agricultural products. So with this MOU, there's hope that the agricultural cooperation will be further enhanced to technical cooperation. That's the MOU on agriculture. The MOU on SMEs is equally important, largely because for both countries, the SMEs provide, to a large extent, for example, India, the SMEs provide the backbone of its economy. A large percentage of its growth is actually dependent on the performance of the SMEs. The SMEs produce almost 8,000 plus products on a yearly basis of different qualities. The Philippines is the same, about 40% or a large chunk of our SMEs contribute to the development of our country's economy. So it's important for, I think both countries realize that there is an opportunity to learn from best practices from both sides, and it's in this core that this MOU is actually being undertaken. Now the MOU between FSI and EQA is actually, or the Indian Council for World Affairs, is actually an attempt to establish a more friendly, cooperative and collaborative relations between two institutions. The Foreign Service Institute, as we all know, is a research and training arm of the Department of Foreign Affairs. EQA, on the other hand, is one of the oldest think tanks of India, and it is the think tank that actually focuses on India's foreign policy as well as international affairs. So there is an opportunity to help out in terms of exchanges of researchers, experts, joint studies, joint symposia, and this, I think, is the objective of the MOU. So we are hoping that with this MOU, this will be the start for deepening across these different sectors. We're also looking forward to signing of other MOUs that will further cement India-Philippine relations. President Duterte is coming after almost a decade of visit. The last president to visit the country, former President Gloria Capogal Arroyo. This is actually a milestone visit. It is not a full-fledged bilateral visit. It's largely under the umbrella of ASEAN. President Duterte, together with other heads of state and government of ASEAN, has been invited to participate in the commemorative celebration of ASEAN-India partnership. ASEAN-India is celebrating 25 years. And at the same time, Prime Minister Modi extended the invitation to all ASEAN heads of government and state to actually attend the Republic Day celebration. So the visit will be for 25-26 on the 25th of January. That will largely focus on the commemorative activities, meetings, as well as side activities to celebrate 25 years of ASEAN-India partnership. And then the 26th, it will be largely focused on all the heads witnessing a tapestry of civil, culture, as well as military extravaganza from India's side. It is an opportunity, the participation of all ASEAN is an opportunity to actually bring on center stage ASEAN in India's foreign relations, but at the same time, it is an opportunity for all to actually see India as it emerges as an emerging economy, as well as an emerging both regional and global power. So a lot of activities have, a number of activities have actually been organized for the visit of not only President Duterte, but as well as the other ASEAN heads of government and state. This is actually a very good question. The Republic Day of India, India is in a way, celebrates two days. One is when it's Independence Day, which is in August, when it actually became independent from Britain, but at the same time remained as a dominion of Britain. But the process of independence actually continued until they actually completed their constitution. And to a large extent, that happened in January 26. So that several decades ago. So the Republic Day is important to India. It actually, in the past, India has actually invited on an individual basis different heads of government. You had the former President of the United States, Prime Minister of Japan. You had the UAE Sheikh, who actually also participated, and you also had then former President Hollande from France, who have participated in the Republic Day to highlight the relations between the countries that have been invited. For ASEAN to be invited, all 10 to be invited during the Republic Day is in many ways unprecedented. It is historic. It gives focus to ASEAN as well as gives focus to India's Act East policy and its growing engagement with the region. We have about 3,000 plus Filipinos in the entire subcontinent. So if you compare that with other countries, it's rather small. But the Filipinos are actually scattered the entire Indian subcontinent. We have Filipinos in Delhi, we have Filipinos in Mumbai, Chennai, Calcutta, we have Filipinos in Bangalore, Goa, Hyderabad. We have Filipinos in different key cities of India. We're also quite blessed. We have Filipinos who are highly skilled professionals. We have engineers, we have IT specialists, we have consultants who are actually serving in both international organizations as well as non-governmental organizations. We have successful chefs in Gurgaon, Noida, and Delhi. We also have a large group of Filipinas married to Indians. So it is a mixed group, many highly skilled. At the same time, we have Filipinos married to Indians. Now, in Delhi alone, we have less than 400. And these Filipinos, they have two associations. One, what's called the FIC, Filipinos in India, and the other association, which is Kapihan. The FIC is the older association. It is a mixed group of Filipinos married to Indians as well as professionals, while Kapihan is largely Filipinas married to Indians. And I think they work as a support group for those who are actually coming to live in India with Indian husbands. There is an adjustment that needs to be done when you live in India, and in a large extent, they act as their support group. I also want to mention that we're very happy to note that many of the groups have also looked beyond themselves. And when I say that, I mean when the earthquake struck Nepal in May 2015, the Filipino community in Delhi was quick to actually respond and actually help out to those who were adversely affected by the earthquake. When Chennai was actually flooded a couple of years ago, our community was equally active in helping out with not just the Filipinos, but also Indians who've been affected by the floods in Chennai. So my point here is we're not very big, but it does not mean that smallness does not mean a weakness. We are the Philcom is an active community, it's dynamic. At the same time, as I said, it has looked beyond itself and is also willing to actually volunteer when need be. My final message is we are an exciting time in the relations between India and the Philippines. There are convergence of interests. There are multiple opportunities that abound across the different areas of cooperation. I think both countries realize there's need to seize these opportunities and to see how we can further the relations in the days, months, and years to come. And we're very positive and we're hopeful that the embassy in New Delhi can contribute in the process of deepening relations between India and the Philippines.